Welcome to Mind Your Business, a deep social podcast presented by me, David Pawsey. In this series, I'll be talking to people from lots of different businesses and industries to find out what the challenges they've faced in order to progress through their career. Thanks for listening, and please check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and all the other major podcast channels. So welcome to another episode of Mind Your Business. Today I've been speaking to Fiona Anderson, who is a big part of the Crawley Innovation Centre, here obviously in Crawley. Fiona's been working with startups for quite a few years. We had a really good in-depth discussion about the challenges that startups face.
The main challenges are always around accessing funding. For very early stage businesses, that's always a problem. You can't go to a bank for a loan, and investors don't really want to invest in very early stage businesses.
How you can go about getting funding.
There's lots more angel investor groups that are popping up who are prepared to or will invest in earlier stage and smaller businesses. Innovate UK has grant funding available as well.
And just the pitfalls to try and avoid.
Is there a need for this product or service that you actually are wanting to launch? I've seen so many really passionate entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, but they're passionate about it because it's something that they're passionate about. It's not necessarily that someone's going to pay money for your service.
So enjoy. Welcome to the Mind Your Business podcast, Fiona.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for asking me, for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So, the first question is, what is your business and how did you get into it?
So I wear two hats at the moment. I work here at the Crawley Innovation Centre as the Innovation Director. And I guess how I got into that role was I knew a couple of people who referred me to the role, but also when I read the role profile, I was like, the role is like written for me. It was a culmination of a whole lot of things I've done over the last 10 years. And yeah, it just really appealed to me and was sort of my ideal kind of role. And then, so I only work here 3 days a week. And then the other 2 days a week, I've been doing my own sort of consultancy for the last couple of years, mentoring businesses that are very early stage. But through a contact that I had the last 2 years, I've been working for a program run by Creative UK. So very involved with giving creative businesses mentoring support. And that's been really interesting. I've been working with businesses in the Northeast, here in the Southeast, and in the Southwest of all places. So opposite ends of the country. And I got into that just by someone I knew put me forward and referred me to Creative UK.
So, you've sort of mentioned about how you've worked with businesses all over the country. Are there different sort of challenges based on geography? Or would you say that the same sort of businesses face the same sort of challenges regardless of where they're based?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think that businesses do ultimately face very similar challenges. Some of them are geographic depending on where they are, like the ones I've been working with down in the Southwest. Cornwall and Devon can be seen as quite a remote part of the country. You go there for holidays, like people who live there, everyone just thinks they go surfing and, that's all they do. But there's a lot of very creative industries down there, a lot to do with sort of outdoor and environment and that kind of thing. And in the Northeast, historically the Northeast being quite a poor part of the country, there hasn't been a lot of investment in there from government, so people have had to kind of make their own way almost. So I think in the Northwest, East and the Southwest, people are very similar in that they're very resilient, they're very sort of, we'll make this work, they use their own initiative to get things off the ground. But from the businesses that I've worked with across all that part of all the country, the main challenges are always around accessing funding. And for very early stage businesses, that's always a problem, because you can't go to a bank for a loan. And investors don't really want to invest in very early stage businesses. So funding, finance, investment, whatever you want to call it, is always a big challenge. What I have found with a lot of the women-owned businesses that I've worked with, again, similar kind of challenges. Women face a lot more challenges than men in terms of within themselves as well, sort of potentially lack of confidence. We don't have the egos necessarily that men have, so we'll always be a bit more cautious about things rather than going in, gung-ho, and we're a lot more cautious. And women especially find it very difficult to access funding and to raise money. And juggling being if you're a mother, a wife, there's always a sense of guilt almost that you're running your own business, but you also need to be a mother. And how do you split your time and be successful at both? So yeah, it's very interesting.
So you've talked about access to funding, and I do want to come back to the sort of female founders and leaders.
Yeah.
So I was reading something quite interesting on LinkedIn today around that.
Yeah.
So in terms of accessing funding, how do businesses access it, and what are the different types of funding available?
It's a bit of a minefield, if I'm honest, Dave. And I wish there was. With AI now, you can probably, put in your parameters or your requirements and it'll spew out a whole lot of stuff. But over the years, it's been really hard to kind of know where the money is. And unfortunately, with government now, with Brexit, we don't have as much access to European money as we used to, because there was a lot of grant funding that was available previously, like through the European Regional Development Fund, for example. That's all fallen away with us, with Brexit. And government doesn't really seem to have sort of been very quick in terms of replacing that. We've got the Shared Prosperity Fund now, which a lot of that money does go to the north of the country, because people think that down here we're quite wealthy, in the south and the southeast, which, as you know, we aren't always. So what I like to do is try and understand from a business what stage they're at first, because sometimes when you're very early stage, you will ultimately, like you as well with your business, have started it on your own, you're funding it on your own. But then there comes a point where you want to grow, you maybe want to employ people, you want to spend some money on marketing, whatever it might be. So grant funding is still potentially a way to do that, because there are pockets of grant funding that's available through your local council, for example, or some of the growth hubs now, which the councils have taken on as well. Innovate UK has grant funding available as well, but unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's so competitive to be applying for those grants, and it takes a lot of time to put an application together. But what I always say to businesses is it's not a wasted time to go through that process, because it helps you to put down a lot of your thoughts in. It's almost like writing a business plan. You're going through the whole process. And then obviously we've got banks, although banks are becoming a lot more stringent. And as you know, with very early stage businesses, they won't lend because there's no security in a business unless you as the owner are prepared to put up your house as security kind of thing. And then investment. So there's loads more angel investor groups that are popping up who are prepared to or will invest in earlier stage and smaller businesses, amounts of up to sort of 250, 500,000. But again, the process to go through investment is really quite hard, and you also need to be prepared, as to give away a share of your business. So, and if you've worked really hard to build your business to where it is, do you want to give it to somebody who's ultimately a stranger and is still going to and then is going to ultimately have a say in your business as well? So yeah, it is still a bit of a minefield, but it's really understanding what stage your business is at, what do you need the money for, and if it is, a traditional form of lending like a loan, are you obviously going to be able to pay that loan back? What's going to happen to the business once you've done that? Are you going to be able to carry on the business? Is it going to grow? So yeah, it's a very hard climate at the moment.
Sorry to interrupt, but I thought now would be a good time to tell you about the podcast and content creation services we offer at Deep Social. Not only can we record and edit your business podcast, which is a fantastic way of sharing your expertise and building deep bonds with your target audience, but we can transform each episode into blog content, white papers, LinkedIn posts, video shorts, a whole selection of marketing content that drives more leads to your business. So drop me an email at david@deepsocial.co.uk to discuss how we can elevate your content marketing success. Now I'll let you get back to the episode.
So, I mean, are there sort of types of businesses that are more likely to get funding? I mean, I know that there's a couple of companies here that are very much sort of sustainability orientated.
Yeah.
I mean, are they the types of businesses that are getting more funding than perhaps more traditional businesses? I'll say traditional businesses. I don't actually know what I mean by that.
I know what you mean. Like more businesses that in the past might have been deemed to be, like they've got a solid business model, cash flow, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a good question because there are a lot, and I think everyone thinks, oh, tech businesses are the ones that get all the money at the moment, whereas not necessarily, because tech, as we know, is changing by the day. And there's a lot more risk involved with investing in a tech business because first, they can grow very fast, but they can also fail just as quickly. If things don't work out, if they aren't keeping up with processes, technology, employing the right people. And that's another one of the challenges that businesses have at the moment is finding the right people to kind of work for them. There isn't the skill set that there was, that people are asking for more money, unrealistic sometimes. So I think working in the creative industries, that's an industry that really struggles accessing funding. Really, really struggles, because a lot of the time, even media companies or film and media companies, it's very difficult to fund something like a production, for example, because there's a lot of moving parts and things involved in that. But obviously people like artists or people who are making things, they're crafts people. I've been working with a guy up in the Northeast he's got his own dance company. So he's a choreographer and a producer, and he's been running his business for about 10 years, and he's largely funded it on his own, but also with some help from the council up there. So I'd say creative industries really struggle to access money. And some sort of smaller businesses that don't have a solid sort of business plan, like it's really important. How are you going to make money? Because ultimately, what is the return going to be for an investor, for example, or a bank, or anyone who's putting money into a business? What is the return going to be? And grants, even with grant funding, ultimately the grant provider still wants to see that after you've used this money for whatever it is, a project or whatever it is you're doing, the business is actually going to be sustainable beyond that. You're not going to be coming back again for more money and more money. And there are some of the CRCs, community interest companies, rely a lot on grant funding and are constantly having to put in new applications all the time, which is quite stressful. So yeah, I think at the moment, it is mainly sort of tech, digital, as you've said, sustainable businesses that are in sectors that are only going to grow, like energy. Here in the centre, we're looking for manufacturing businesses that have got some kind of a solid foundation or something that's tangible in terms of a return.
So, I mean, you've obviously worked with a lot of startups over your career.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the sort of common mistake that you see where you think, well, that is, on paper, that is a really good company,
Yeah.
but somewhere, it doesn't quite reach the heights, or it takes off, then gets some funding, but, it isn't able to scale?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. A lot of the time, when I worked at NatWest and ran the accelerator, we always used to say, fail fast and fail cheap, rather than wasting money on marketing or whatever, or getting a product or service out there that you think is going to be serving your customer, but you don't actually know that it is. Is there a need for this product or service that you actually are wanting to launch? And a lot of the time I've seen so many really passionate, entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, but they're passionate about it because it's something that they're passionate about. It's not necessarily that someone's going to pay money for your service. So I always think it's really important to ascertain who is your customer and why are they, oh, excuse me, why are they going to buy from you? And does your product or service meet a need for them? So really, as I say, really understanding your customer and is there a need for their product or service? And then, as you said, not being prepared, so not having a proper strategic plan. So, right, I'm going to sell this product for £20 per item or per month. But then as we're growing, I'm going to need to take on more staff. So what does that look like? Where am I going to get those people from? Are we going to employ them part-time? Are we going to outsource? I think that's the point when businesses often stumble and can potentially fail, as you said, when they raise some money, they employ people, it's the wrong people, or they then don't have a proper strategic plan beyond that for their growth. And they overextend themselves sometimes. That's once they've got the money in. Scale up businesses are always, when they reach that point of, they've gone through the growth and then they do that, that's when there's a big risk of businesses failing. Because they overextend themselves and they don't have a proper plan in place. And also nowadays, things like what's happened in the world in the last 5-6 years with COVID. A lot of businesses didn't have a contingency plan for COVID. And now what's going on in the world, we don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen.
But when you said the last 5-6 years, I thought you were going to say last 5-6 days. But at the moment, it feels like it could be the last 5-6 hours, just because there's so many. I mean, the phrase black swan events. Like I used to sort of work in financial services, and it's a phrase to say something that happens very rarely.
Very rarely, yeah.
But now these black swan events seem to be coming up more often.
More often, it's true, because we don't know. I mean, everything that's going on now, as you say, in the last 5 or 6 days as well, is going to have, it already is having a massive impact on us with the petrol price. I don't believe in 10 days the petrol price has gone up. I think
we were having this conversation.
Station around the corner, it's like gone from 129 to 141 in 10 days. And that's ultimately affects people's bottom lines, having to fill your car and everything else that's going to happen. So, I think businesses need to be a little bit more aware of contingency and sort of really thinking beyond the today, that we need the money now. It's sort of how we're going to grow, what do we need money for, and when we do grow, how are we going to invest and how we're going to use that money.
I mean, you raise a very interesting point. I mean, obviously I work in marketing, and for me, often with smaller companies, they think, all right, actually marketing, that's an expense that we can cut.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like, well, you might have business now, but are you prepared for 6 months, 12 months down the line?
Yeah.
But I mean, something that you said about someone could be very passionate about something and think, oh, yeah, there's a business there. How can you sort of find out cheaply and quickly whether, is it market research? Is it literally getting a product out there? I mean, what?
It's a combination of both, I think. Yeah, you should definitely do your market research and know that is there other products or services out there similar to yours? If so, how are you going to differentiate yourselves from what's already out there? Are you going to undercut, or is it going to be customer service, or what's going to differentiate you? And then really testing your product. So what we used to help businesses in the accelerator do sometimes was run sort of test groups. So even with the businesses, with the cohorts, we'd sort of run they could do like a test with 5 or 6 businesses to see and ask them the questions. How much would you pay for this? Why would you pay this? Would you buy it? All those kinds of things. So it's very much around market research, knowing your customers, what we've just said, and knowing that there is a market for that. Are people going to pay for whatever it is that you are producing? And then if there are global events or things that are going to happen within your business, are you going to be able to adapt it to still be able to continue? So, yeah, I think. Have I answered that question? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's. I can't speak for the huge audience that'll be watching, but
A huge
for
audience, yes.
so obviously something we touched on was how, there aren't as many female founders and leaders. And I mean, I saw a thing on LinkedIn today saying that that's dropped even more recently.
I know, I was talking to somebody yesterday who told me.
And, both founders and leadership positions. And I mean, as I say, I sort of used to work for the FT, and I know that, around sort of 2010, there was a big thing about getting diversity on boardrooms, and there was lots of evidence saying that the more diverse the board is, the better success, because you get such a different sort of range of point of views.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
I mean, and as we've sort of seen on the background, like, it's an all-female team here.
Yeah.
I mean, so what, why are we sort of seeing women in leadership positions dropping, do you think?
I don't know, David. And to me, it's quite disheartening, actually, because, I worked in NatWest for 18 years. I started there in 2001. And before that, before I came to this country, I worked in South Africa in the motor industry, which was also, I worked for VW dealership, very male-dominated, obviously. So I've always worked in quite male-dominated environments. And when I worked in NatWest, I can't remember it. So I left in 2018. Just, I think, the year after that, Alison Rose was appointed as the CEO of NatWest, which for me was such an amazing thing. She was one of the first women CEOs of a bank, a UK bank. I know in some of the Scandinavian countries, they've had women before, and also women prime ministers there. But
yeah, apparently the Nordics lead in diversity.
yeah, I know. Apparently they do. Don't know what it is about those countries, but yeah. And when I ran the accelerator NatWest, Alison Rose was one of the board kind of sponsors, so to speak. So within the bank, she was very much promoting the accelerator. She came down to Brighton a few times, and I met her. She brought a few of the non-exec directors down as well, who were actually women. And she was always just, to me, she's such an inspiring person, because she started quite low. She came out, she was a graduate in the bank, worked her way up, did various roles. But she was always such a personable person. She was very approachable. It wasn't like, I'm a director and I'm the CEO and you can't talk to me. And she was very pro about promoting and giving women the opportunities to develop yourselves within the bank. And I think, and from my perspective, I always had male directors in the bank, and I was given opportunities to grow. I never really wanted to become a director, because I never wanted to manage people. To me, that would be my nightmare. I would never want to have a team or have to manage people. I find that a nightmare. But I don't know why it's going backwards. To me, it's quite worrying, because there's a lot of, there's so much out there about women and promoting women and especially young girls. And I don't know if it's still that there's a lack of sense of confidence in women about putting ourselves forward for positions or roles, whatever it might be, that we're not 100% sure that we're going to be successful at. And I think there's still an element of that uncertainty around how things are going to land. Am I good enough for this role? Am I going to be able to do it? So yeah, I do think it's quite worrying. And I know within the sort of investment circles, there's a few pockets of organizations that are trying to promote women investors to invest in women-owned businesses, which I think is the only way forward, really. So yeah, I don't really know what it is, if it's a generational thing, or women just not being given those opportunities.
Yeah, and it's funny, sort of, since you said about, I don't know what it is about the Nordic countries. I'm sure that they give free childcare, or they're heavily invested in
Yeah, they do.
affordable childcare.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, actually, is that maybe the reason? But
Yeah, it could be because, like I mentioned earlier, about a lot of the female founders that I've worked with, there is this constant sort of juggling, this constant guilt around, I'm committing all this time and energy to my business, but I'm also having to be a mother, and it's a constant juggling thing, this guilt and this, I'm torn between these two things, and there often does seem, and it's not the case anymore, because I know a lot of organizations now also give men paternity leave, the same opportunities as women to be with their children and to be a present father. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges, I think, that are sort of holding women back.
I mean, it's interesting when I think back. I've probably, in terms of managers and some of the agencies I've worked with, I'd say the majority of my managers have been women.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I don't know whether that means that sort of has given me a different perspective, and to a certain extent, I don't like the male sort of that. I want to say it's almost that being convinced you're right, even if you're not, that's almost kind of like that masculine energy.
Yeah.
And it's like, if there's sort of three guys saying they can like the barbecue, I'm not one to go, well, actually, I know, I'm like, well, if you guys want to argue about it, and then maybe I'll come in later with my bellows or something and sort it out. But
help them on their way.
Yeah, it's
yeah, it's interesting, because I think also, obviously, in the sectors or the companies I've worked for, there have been male dominated environments. So I guess when I was at the bank, I certainly wasn't ever encouraged to go for more senior roles, which maybe held me back as well. But as I say, I never really put myself forward anyway, because I want to manage people. But maybe there is still a sense of that women don't feel that they're capable and they can put themselves forward. And you do still hear of real kind of sexism and discrimination in certain industries and certain sectors, so women wouldn't even think about going into those.
Yeah, and I mean, sort of something I often wonder is, was a better job done of covering up that sort of behaviour?
Yeah.
Or has it sort of got worse recently with, I don't want to get too much down the road, but the political and social sort of environment we've been over the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, maybe there is an element of that it was covered up for so long, and then now things are more out in the open, but it does then show, I suppose it makes you question even more, like, what is going on, and still goes on in some, you hear about things in the police force, for example, where there's still rife racism and sexism that goes on. So women aren't necessarily going to put themselves forward to go into the police force. And there's all of that kind of thing going on. And it does just still feels that as a woman sometimes that you do have to, not battle, but it's a lot more of like prove yourself all the time.
Yeah.
That if you voice your opinion about something, are you overreacting? And it's like, well, not really. I have an opinion about this.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that, if a man said the same thing, it would be, it's purely because a woman has said it, that it's like, oh, that's an overreaction.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to actually that might be an issue.
Yeah, and let's listen to her, and like you said, in a boardroom scenario, when there's dynamics, there's women, men, people now as well of other genders, and it does bring a different dynamic, but then it's being open to that, and as you've just said, listening to people's opinions or listening to what they have to say. Because because I've always been the kind of person that I would never say something unless I actually really meant it. So I often wouldn't contribute in team meetings or in scenarios because I was maybe a bit aware of being shot down in flames, but also unless I've got something valid to say, I'm not going to say anything. Whereas now, I think the last few years, I've learned to be a bit more vocal.
I mean, you obviously mentioned COVID, which was, lots of fun for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that was the most challenging time of your career, or have there been other challenges that have...
Yeah, it was interesting because I wasn't. I was actually back in South Africa then, so I took a sabbatical from that West at the end of 2017, and I went back there for 6 months, and then while I was there, I was offered a job to work in a recruitment agency of all things. It was a woman who actually went to her for a job. And then she said, oh, we're going through this investment, we're going through this takeover at the moment, and it would be great to have you on board with my banking background, business understanding. So I ended up resigning from the bank and I went back to South Africa and I ended up working with her. But to be honest, my time in South Africa was actually the most challenging time I've had in my career. And for a couple of reasons. One was the working environment there. I realized most of my career had been here. And, the working environment, the work ethic there is very different. It's quite aggressive and you really have to sort of make your voice heard. It's this sort of hustle culture. It always feels like everyone wants something from you. And if you're not, it's he who shouts the loudest. Kind of thing. And so I didn't really enjoy that. And when I was working with her, she just became like a really horrible person to work with. She was constantly scrutinizing everything I did. She would read my emails and comment on that the punctuation was wrong, or I'd put the wrong word in, and it was horrible. So I left there after about 6 months, and then tried to go on my own and I engaged with a lot of the centers like this, innovation places, entrepreneurial accelerators. So I did a little bit of mentoring and coaching at some of those, but the businesses couldn't really pay me much. And then I got introduced to a lady who was also, again, fantastic job and role on the outside, working with a woman who ran a business support programs for women, mainly around in agriculture. So she ran around various countries in Africa. I was so lucky I got to go to Botswana, Zambia, Kenya, and Mozambique with her to run these programs. But again, she just became she was a horrible, horrible woman. It was all about her, the way she spoke to me. I'd never been spoken to like that in my entire life. I bet you're thinking, oh, well, the common theme here is you. But
No, I didn't think that at all, Fiona.
And maybe it was me because I'd lived here for so long and I'd become used to the work ethic here. And people here are very polite. We almost, I think, talk around things too much. Whereas in South Africa, it's like you go through for the jugular. And I wasn't used to it. And I certainly wasn't used to being spoken to the way I was by these people. So again, I left that job after about 6-7 months. And then that was when I decided I wanted to come back here. And then literally the month later, COVID hit. So I got stuck there for about 9 months after. Everything kind of shut down in March. And then I came back in October 2020 when the first flights were sort of opening.
Yeah.
I jumped on the first flight and I was back here.
Oh, how did that feel, getting off that plane?
Yeah, it was actually amazing. And I knew, the UK is actually my home. South Africa is not my home. I was really looking forward to getting back to Brighton. I remember driving, when you go sort of past the Hurstbeer Point turn-off and down there towards Brighton, I was like, oh, this feels like home.
Yeah.
I was so happy. And it was interesting coming back in COVID because everyone was in the same position. So we were all working at home. Nothing much was really going on in terms of social stuff. So you didn't feel like you were sort of missing out on anything. So in a way, it was a good time to come back because it helped me settle back into things in a more relaxed way, I suppose. So yeah, I would say that was the most challenging time in my life, actually, going back to South Africa.
Yeah.
Which I never thought it would be.
Well, thank you for sharing.
No, it's fine. It taught me a lot about myself as well. So yeah.
I mean, obviously, you talked about everybody working from home during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, coming into this area, you know, I've dabbled between working from home, being in shared offices, and I mean, like you know, for me, this place is perfect because, you know, I am a lot more focused, and you know, I am trying to grow the business. But I mean, you know, how are you finding that people are still sort of stuck? And I find, you know, being with people energizes me.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like my quiet times as well. I can get over socialized, but yeah. I mean, do you think we've kind of lost sight of the power of, you know, human interaction? I mean, it seems that, you know, we sort of had. And I know sort of clients that I were working with were all the physical events, you know, networking events got cancelled, but they went online.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, actually, this is better. We don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And it feels now that we're moving back that actually people are like, actually, those events serve, you know, it's not just about selling or, you know, keynote speakers. It's about, you know, interaction and engagement. I mean, do you think that we're sort of getting to another tipping point where, you know, we've sort of gone, and, you know, and I think I've heard quite a few people say since the start of this year that have, you know, the work for organizations that are sort of having to go into the office more. I mean, do you think that we have sort of turned a bit of a corner there?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was talking to somebody earlier actually who was in, and he was saying that they now insist that their staff are in the office at least 4 days a week. Senior management team are in every day. And I think a lot more organizations are turning towards that. And we were talking about how it's difficult, and I, as I say, I actually ended up starting two positions during COVID. And it was really hard starting a position on your own and being at home. You know, you're not in an office learning the role. For me, I do value that human contact and being able to be in a room with other people. And I think more and more, I think also with everything that's happening with technology and AI, people are valuing human contact a lot more. You know, face to face interactions more than online or over a phone.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned human networking events.
Yeah.
Because we've got one lined up for 14th of April, have we decided? So,
Oh, excuse me.
so yeah, I'm going to be talking about how you can use podcasts to create an entire content campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll put all the details about that in the show notes.
Right.
But I mean, that's obviously something that you're doing more and more here at the Crawley Innovation Centre.
Yeah. It's something we definitely are. One of the key sort of values of the organisation is obviously around business support.
If people want to find out more about, well, the work that you do individually and also the Crawley Innovation Centre, how can they find you?
Well, LinkedIn, that's always the first port of call nowadays for me, because my LinkedIn profile is up to date and my contact information is on there, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. Can I just say one thing about the centre?
Yep.
Okay. So what really differentiates us at Crawley Innovation Centre is the offering of business support. So, and that's access through myself as the Innovation Director. We offer free support to any businesses that are based here. And it's really about helping businesses grow. For us, that's a real measure of success. Even if you grow and you move out of here, for us, that's great. You know, you've developed, you've grown, you've moved on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.